Matt Alcoholic. Hey, thanks, Preston. My sobriety date is June 7th of 2014, and for that I am grateful. And Preston's so unattached from sobriety time, he had to ask me right before the meeting, during the meeting, what his sobriety date was. Um, it's in my phone. I'm like, someone should study our friendship. But it's a cool date because my brother got sober 4 days later. And yeah, October of 23 was one of those times that Preston was talking about where we were going to a lot of meetings and well, I was sponsoring people. Preston wasn't because he was like 3 hours sober. But no, it was a crazy time. And we were running about 5 or 6 guys all the time, going to meetings and playing disc golf. And yeah, it's times like that that are so special to me. And my brother moved out to Oregon, and he's still sober. And this was the first place that I don't know. We were talking about the First Step meeting that's here on Tuesday nights at 7 o'clock, and it's become such a special part of my sobriety. And me and Preston and my brother started coming to that meeting somewhere during that time frame, and to see that meeting become what it's become is pretty awesome. So anyway, what do you guys want to talk about? Nah, I don't know. My book's more like a comfort blanket thing up here, but we'll read something at the start. So if you don't like everything else I say, you can't argue with the book. So it's what Preston was talking about, though. I feel like I'm leaning for some. Sorry. On page 89, in working with others, practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. It works when other activities fail. This is our 12th suggestion. Carry this message to other alcoholics. You can help when no one else can. You can secure the confidence when others fail. Remember, they are very ill. Life will take on new meaning to watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a friendship grow up about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. We know that you will not want to miss it. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives. And that's what I was thinking about when Preston was introducing me, because it's that frequent contact with newcomers and with each other. I have to have both. And it's the coolest thing. And the fellowship that they're talking about that I've experienced is so far beyond, going bowling or hanging, and like that stuff's fine. I mean, bowling sucks, but like doing stuff with people in the program outside of meetings is awesome. I made fun of my friend group for years that they played disc golf, and I play a lot of disc golf now. So, but that fellowship that they're talking about, it's working with new people, and to see the lights come on. I'm not even thirsty. I'm nervous. Put it down. It's the coolest thing in the world. It's absolutely priceless. So obviously, it's important for people that are new to understand what Alcoholics Anonymous is about. And I think there's a danger, though, because I've been around long enough to see it. I've seen a lot of guys come into this thing and get a sponsor and get well, and think that the 12th step is like a special reserved thing for people that are good with people or that have been sober for a certain amount of time. And you can even still be sober, but you're completely missing what Alcoholics Anonymous is about. One of the guys that I sponsor had his first sponsee when he was like 6 months sober, and it was awesome. And he had something to share and to give that guy because he had been through the steps. So if you know me, and most people in here do, I talk about God and I talk about the steps. Mostly, I try to. That's what the whole thing, this whole thing's about, getting this relationship with God. I drank detached from that power my whole life leading up to Alcoholics Anonymous. proves that. It also proved even when I'm not drinking, I'm pretty miserable. I'm super insane. The book talks about the insanity of alcohol returning, and then we drink. And I can see that today. I couldn't see it prior to Alcoholics Anonymous. I was pretty certain that I was a decent person. And then when I drank, I became a little insane. And, the insanity precedes the drink. That's a rough thing to wrap my head around, but it's the only place for somebody like me to really come in here. To be 12 years sober, and I did not want to be sober. I didn't announce that I found my tribe when I got here, and you guys are my people, and what a great way of life. It's funny because people meet you when they meet you, and so some people have met me over the last several years and have a certain version of me that they know. But then there's the old timers and some other folks that were around when I got sober, and they balance that really well. And I was at a meeting not too long ago, and this newer guy was he was going on about me a little bit, and it was kind of funny after the meeting. And Harold was standing right next to him, and quickly, like, you should have seen Matt when he came in, and brought it all back down to reality. So I showed up at my first Alcoholics Anonymous meeting without a desire to stop drinking, without a desire to work the steps. And I don't know about sick and tired of being sick and tired. And a lot of those things, I got arrested again in a blackout again. I tried to laugh it off again. And I was staying with my brother, and he said, "You've got to go to a meeting." This is the brother that emerged in Alcoholics Anonymous 9 years later. And so I went to a meeting, and I'm like, fine. And, but when I think about the power of God in my life, Wayne told me that one time pretty early on, because I did this thing well-intentioned when I first got sober. I'd talk like God just showed up in my life once I got sober. I found God here. And in a certain sense I did. But he reminded me of everything prior to. He said, we don't get here and we don't get a shot to stay sober without God getting us here. And that's true. Never mind all the crazy circumstances and all that. Just getting to my first meeting, I was living with my brother in Stratford at the time in a spare bedroom. Cause we stay places, right? Yeah. I'm staying with my brother, and so I looked it up, and the downtown group was the closest meeting to Stratford. So I went down Kearney, and I had looked it up and saw it was by an O'Reilly, and then didn't use Google Maps. It wasn't that long ago that I got sober, so I'm not sure why suddenly I'm just gonna guess where the meeting's at. So I fly right past where the downtown group was, and I went all the way down Kearney to this other O'Reilly, and I didn't see an AA meeting, and I thought, well, I tried. I'm a big trier, So I sat in this parking lot, and I texted my mommy to let her know that I tried to go to an AA meeting, and I texted a girl to let her know that I had also tried to go to an AA meeting, and I thought it was pretty good Sunday, and I tried. So I drive back towards my brother's house, feeling accomplished for the day. And as I'm getting up to where the meeting actually was that I had driven past, I'm in the left lane going too fast, because when you have pending legal, I just got out of jail that Saturday, I don't know, arrested on a Friday. I think I got out late Friday night. My brother came and got me on Saturday. And then here I am, still with expired plates, still with, the things that we have going on. And I'm speeding down Kearney, and this guy's in the left lane going real slow. And he's got the circle triangle on his back glass. And he turns his blinker on, and I'm like, damn it, you know. You know, the only reason that I even knew what that was, my dad was sober in Alcoholics Anonymous for 4 years, and it was the best 4 years of my life with him, certainly. And yeah, so I followed Steve into the parking lot, and those guys they all thought I worked at O'Reilly, because I don't even think the O'Reilly's there anymore. It's probably a dispensary, but weed's not sober. We'll just get that out of the way. I think David said they were recording it, so we'll just get that out there. It's not sober. Okay, I'm seeing who's not making eye contact. Like, what were we talking about? O'Reilly, thank you. Jesus. Those guys thought I worked at O'Reilly because I parked up there at the corner, and the meeting was all the way down. I had to walk past a couple of massage parlors and different places over there on Kearney to get to where the meeting actually was. But they all thought I worked at O'Reilly because I parked up there for a long time, because my car's not going to be spotted at an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. Billy Joe, legitimately, I was like 8 or 9 months sober, and he asked me how it was going at O'Reilly's, and I'm like, anyway, I guess what started me on all this was that people meet me in a certain way now, but the reality was that's how I showed up in Alcoholics Anonymous. I waited until the meeting started, and I sat. They had a couple of chairs right next to the door, which was nice, and I sat in that chair. They asked if there were any newcomers, not knowing that we're easy to spot, and I'm not doing any of that, not getting a white chip, not talking to you guys really. And I don't remember the meeting at all. I remember a lot of laughter, which was confusing. And, but when we circled up to pray, they all closed their eyes to pray, and I right out the meeting. So, little newcomer trick. When they start praying, you can just slide out, they're not paying attention. So when I say it doesn't matter how much you really want to stay sober, it does not matter. And people get upset with me about that. That's okay. I lived it. I lived the experience of drinking every day, drinking against my will, drinking when I didn't want to, burning my life to the ground, losing my kids, losing everything. And I didn't want to do any of that. And it happened anyway, because I don't have a choice in whether I drink or not. So, didn't really matter what I thought about any of it. And so, I stuck around there for a little bit. Once I figured out you could pick up monthly, chips, that was pretty cool to me. So, I wasn't doing a whole lot. The guy that would eventually be my first sponsor, when we talk about like being a welcoming place for the newcomer, no idea what that dude shared at my first meetings. Probably nonsense, but he walked up to me and offered me a soda and a candy bar and said it'll help with the shakes. And I said a drink would help with the shakes, sir. And I didn't say it quite that way. And then I began to explain to him why soda is really bad for you and you shouldn't drink it, I ate the Snickers though, but the soda, I'm like, you don't realize how much. There's a lot of chemists in AA, so maybe a chemist. He's explaining to me sugar content and vodka and nonsense. That act of kindness is why I asked that guy to sponsor me. That was it. He did such a good job with me through the steps. We did this crazy thing. It's revolutionary. We each had a book, and we opened it, and we started from the beginning. And when the book said to do something, we did it. And he didn't add his own little take on that. That was profound for me, particularly in the fifth step. this is also something people don't like me for, and that's okay. The sponsor doesn't have a speaking part in the book in the fifth step. If you find it, show it to me. It's not there. I had my list. I was so nervous I was going to get cross-examined by this guy with this stuff, and I read the first person on my list. We're sitting in his car, and he's smoked, and I wanted the windows up because what if somebody walked by? And so he's smoking. I can barely read this thing, and I read the first one, and I stop because I'm ready for all the questions. Everybody always had a lot of questions for me. About things. And he said, was that the only person on your list? And I said, no. He said, well, keep reading. And I'm like, oh, strange. We did that a few times before I figured out what was going on. I ripped through that list, and absolutely down as we went through the rest of the steps, we talked about it a little bit more. I'm not saying that we never discussed it or that I never discuss things in a fourth and fifth step with my sponsees. Of course I do. But in that moment, when we're so exposed, he just listened, we got into the nitty gritty about it later. I'm down with that. But in that moment, like, I'm just so scared, and I think it's all so special, and it's just not. So anyway, I love him, to this day. He passed away not too long ago, and, I'm not alive today without him. I know that. And, the sponsor I have today has been my sponsor for over 10 years, and asking him to sponsor me was scarier than I've been married twice. I was more nervous to ask him to sponsor me than I was to ask a girl to marry me, and it was, I'm like, what if he says no? And I met him early on too, and he was super boring when I first got sober, and then he was super peaceful when I was about a year and a half sober. And he didn't change. I did, my first sponsor was a big personality, and everybody liked him. And I'm like, cool, if you want what we've got, and I'm like, he's popular here. My sponsor today, though, is so steady, so content, so serene. And that was super attractive to me a year and a half sober, and it still is today. Not just with my sponsor, but with people that I associate with in life today. Most of them have this underpinning that's a relationship with God that is pretty cool to see. So I don't know. That was my arrival into Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't like all the messy stuff beforehand necessarily. The turning point for me early on in my life, it was strange. My dad told me when I was 17 that I might be an alcoholic, and he had never seen me drink before. And that was confusing to me at the time. It's not today. It's painfully obvious most of the time that we might be an alcoholic. And so he had been sober at the time for a couple of years, I said, in Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's my experience, not his, but it was such an important pivot point in my life. He had been sober for 4 years. I was 19 years old, and I'd been pretty good. After he posed that to me when I was 17, I thought about it a little bit, and I dialed it back, and then I stopped drinking for a time because I thought it was pretty cool. Anybody that's lived that life in active alcoholism as a kid knows the ugliness of that, and the fact that this guy was sober, I thought was pretty cool. So I wasn't drinking at the time either, and my brother called me in November of 2004, and or October, somewhere in there, and he said Dad called me for my birthday and he's drinking again. And I was like, well, okay. And so anyway, I'm kind of working through this for a little bit, and in November I'm hanging out with a buddy, and I was talking to him about it, and he said, you're 19 and you're not drinking because of this support for your dad or whatever was going on at the time. And he said, he's a good friend. He said, he's drinking, you should too. And I'm like, that is an excellent point, Darren, and because Darren and I drank like we drink. And it's funny, even not drinking as a 19-year-old, like I'm still hanging out with my guy that we would drink. And so we went out in Colombia, and we drank, and I've shared this a lot, but it was, again, if you've been there, you've been there. I'm having the conversation with myself in the mirror in a public bathroom at billiards in Colombia. I remember that no one else was in there, but the reality at that time of night at a bar, there were probably other folks in the bathroom, coming and going. And I'm telling myself that I'm a piece of shit just like my dad. And I'm going to drink just like he drank, and I'm going to live just like he lived. And, this is the first time I drank in a while, and I'm like, yeah, this is what we do, my grandpa called me the next day, and my dad had died that day. At 41 years old, and I am now 41 years old, so that's weird. I remember my brother turned 41, and he's like, it's kind of weird, man. And I'm like, you're putting some weird stuff on just being, but it's weird. It's weird to be the age that my dad's life was done, because I just feel like there's so much more to do and to live and experience. And so anyway, I don't come from a real touchy-feely family, so my grandpa calls me, and I'm like, what's going on, Grandpa? And he's like, your dad died this afternoon. And I'm like, okay. And I went to work. It was the weirdest thing. And I'm just losing it. And so anyway, that's a big hinge point for somebody. It was weird. I know I didn't like cause any, but just like hadn't been drinking. I drank, and the next day he's dead. And so I run like we run really for the next 10 years. I was 29 when I got sober, and there were some interludes, where I could clean it up. But anytime I wasn't drinking, I was obsessing about drinking. We talk about that a lot. I obsessed about it all the time when I wasn't drinking. When I'm drinking, I'm good. I'm not. I'm a little obsessed about the next one. But I'm, I got what I want, and so that's what I remember the most about that time prior to getting sober. It sounds so crazy, but I had a hard time sleeping. That's shocking. But I would lay in bed, and I'd think about, I'd do this weird drink, like a drunk run in my head, and think about it like that. And I'd go to sleep. I'm super sick. I don't do that anymore, but, it was just a strange, I had a very distorted view of life. And it was just it was ugly. There was cool stuff in there. I've got two beautiful children, and they were a part of that time, and there was difficulty around that. But what Alcoholics Anonymous set me free from, that little mirror conversation, it turns out this isn't about being like a dirtbag or a really bad person. I thought it was. I thought I was bad, and you guys would help me get sober, and I could be good. And it's not a behavioral issue. Not if you're an alcoholic. People don't like that either, but it's not. I do tragic things like the book talks about 100%. It's not because I'm just a bad person, or I lack enough character or will to do something different. I have alcoholism, and it's a disease, and it jacks with our mind in these crazy ways. I've got every reason in the world to be sober. I had been dry for a couple of months, and I was losing my freaking mind. I had drank for 4 or 5 days straight when she had left with the kids. She went up to Michigan for a week to see her family, and I drank the whole time, and then I just had to shut it off as soon as she got back, and I was losing it for almost 2 months, and it was time again. That thing was cranked, and I said, "You got to go." And she was so tired of it. She said, "Okay." And I knew she'd go to Michigan with my kids, and she did, and she should have. Um, and I went on that last run that lasted almost a year. I don't last long because I like to get out and not like go to bars and stuff. I just like to drive around, and see what's going on. I'm from a small town, and I'm just like, let's so eventually I get stopped, but I'd been stopped a lot of times by law enforcement, and tried to clean it up while I was on probation, and all the silly stuff that we do, and not knowing that it was so far beyond my control. So this wasn't a bad to good thing. It was a dead to alive thing that happened here. I was absolutely dead. I knew it. I did, I just did those crazy things that we do. I drove drunk from here to Boonville, where my mom and my sister live, 3 hours away, and I show up to my mom's house. It's so crazy, and I'm explaining to her why she's going to have to bury her son. The level of like selfishness encapsulated in all of that is so disturbing. You know, but I was just convinced that that's what was going to happen, and people were going to share in that misery. And I mean, and from that point on, she knew she had done all she could do, and she just let me run. And I don't know. It's just such a slow, awful death. And then all of a sudden, we can show up here. And like life's possible, and I've seen it in so many ways. It's overwhelming. It's overwhelming how good life can be. And when I realize, even still today, it's still not a behavioral problem, character defects, all that stuff. That stuff gets taken away. It absolutely does. It's never been taken away because I worked on it. Not once. God has pulled that stuff out of me in his time. Some of it stayed longer than it probably needed to, but I don't know. It does. It changes so much. And so for somebody like me that drinks the way that I drink, I'm incredibly selfish and self-centered. I've been in meetings with people where they drive drunk with their kid in a car one time, and that's their rock bottom, and they come in here and they get sober. It was daily operating for me with my son, and I don't say that lightly. Looking back, it makes me sick. But those kids, they were young when I got sober. My son was 4. My daughter was about a year and a half old. And, they don't know me any different than they know me today. And as they've gotten older, they're 16 and 13. And, as appropriate with my kids, having a real conversation about what alcoholism is, and not the one that I got of like drinking's real bad, so don't do it. It's like, okay, mom, do what you want, but here's what you might be up against. And I was at my sister's a couple years ago with my kids over the summer, and we found a box of stuff from my dad, and I'd went through it, and my grandma had kept this very detailed journal of my dad's comings and goings. He was in treatment for the first time when he was 13, and I was sitting there with my son at the time, and he was about 13, 14. Anyway, I didn't show him all of it, but he was kind of interested in some of the stuff that was in that box. And so we talked about it a little bit. We talked about alcoholism more that night, as appropriate for a teenager. Anyway, we go to bed that night, and I'm laying there wide awake, thinking about my dad, thinking about my son, thinking about the fact that I was sober. And from across the room, he said, "Are you still awake?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Me too." And he said, he said, "It's real sad what happened to your dad." And I said, "Yeah." And and he doesn't say anything, and I'm like, I am never gonna fall asleep, you know. And he said, "Daddy, I'm so glad that you're sober." And I mean, uh, you know, okay, these steps and everything that Alcoholics Anonymous is about. When you're that dead inside and then you get to live a life like that, I didn't have a whole lot of problems with God. Didn't know what any of it meant. I still don't know what most of it means, but it didn't matter. I was dying, and then I get to live a life like that where, it, it's all the questions that I had about getting sober and what AA was about, it just doesn't matter. And most of them were stupid questions. They were the dumbest questions, So if I do these steps, can I still, that's what most of the questions were, can I still, fill in the blank? But this program offers like a real life for people. And I remember people talking that way when I got sober, and I thought they were a little off their rocker. But I had no idea. I had no experience of what they were talking about and what they had experienced. They had seen guys come in and get well, and they were excited about that. I didn't know anything about doing anything for anybody else. Alcoholics Anonymous it kills me when I see either guys that I sponsor or just people that I've gotten to know that stay sober and drift away from this thing, and then they do the check-in with Alcoholics Anonymous, and the first thing out of their mouth most of the time is, "I've been doing great." It's a little different with the guys that I sponsored and that I took all the way through the work than if I just see someone at a meeting. Like, I'm not hollering at those people most of the time. But it happened with a sponsee not too long ago. I hadn't seen him in a year plus, and he called me to tell me how great he was doing. And I cut him off, and I said, I don't give a shit how you're doing. I wonder how many people you could have helped if you had stayed in Alcoholics Anonymous, That's the reality of it. And it just kills me to see people get this solution, see their life get better, and then they just think it's about their life staying good. I'm doing good. No, you're selfish is what you are. And I was one at one time. I'm doing pretty good. This is so far beyond how that's almost just like it's going to happen. Like, my life has cleaned up and changed in so many really cool ways. And that's awesome. None of it compares to meeting Ben in this meeting almost 2 years ago, and he's crying uncontrollably at his first meeting, and we have a first step meeting, and we get in the book 2 days after that meeting, and he's coming up on 2 years sober next month, and he sponsors a lot of people, had no issues about doing that because he was convinced that his life depended on it. There's a page in the book about that. I have to work with guys to stay sober. I absolutely have to, 100%. But it's a really weird approach with newcomers when we tell them, like, we have to do this or we're going to drink. It's like, well, that's thoughtful of you. I stay sober in the process of helping these guys, but on page 159, it talks about what that should look like for me. These men had found something brand new in life. Though they knew they must help other alcoholics if they would remain sober, that motive became secondary. It was transcended by the happiness they found in giving themselves for others. That's pretty cool. For someone like me that is still fairly selfish and self-centered, when I lose track of what matters. Of course I stay sober working with guys, but that has been transcended by seeing these guys their lives change, and it's the craziest thing, especially when these guys get their kids back and all the cool things that I've got to see pass in my life. don't deserve to be in my children's life in the way that I am. I don't deserve to fly up to Michigan whenever I want and stay in my ex-wife's house with her and her husband and my kids. And we do that multiple times a year, every year. We've done Thanksgiving together. When we first did it, a lot of her family came. They're like, this is pretty cool. She's hosting Thanksgiving. And then they saw the dynamic of like, I'm there and her husband's there. He's also named Matt. So it's very confusing for everybody. So the Thanksgiving crowd has dwindled, but it's pretty cool that it's the three of us and these kids and then her husband's boy. You know, all the pain and all the nonsense attached, particularly to that relationship with her. You know, that's what those guys in Alcoholics Anonymous set me straight on pretty quick. I called her lots of things in meetings and it wasn't her name. And I made her, I won't even get started on open discussion meetings, but I got sober in open discussion meetings and I made her the topic a lot. And they let me do it. Those guys never embarrassed me. Ever. They let me ramble and sound absolutely insane. Then they took me aside after the meeting and suggested that my ex-wife isn't a meeting topic for Alcoholics Anonymous. And while we were at it, neither were my DWIs. And I thought, well, this is, you know, brand new information. What do we talk about then? You know, and they're like, the solution. I'm like, and where does one find the solution? You know, I was shown the way in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I think if you're new, get around people that seem to have a decent idea of what this thing's about. And if you've been around a while, and we can pull back. Like I said, I had a period of time where I pulled back from Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't know how people do it for a long time. I did it for like 2 weeks, and I was going crazy. But you know, to get to experience life at that level today. It's only God's grace. I took my kid's mom through it like we do. A lot of people have said nice things to me over the years, certainly, but she called me on my sobriety date, which happens to be our former wedding anniversary. So it's just a whole mess. She calls me on my sobriety date. She asked me why I didn't call her to wish her a happy anniversary, and it's all very confusing, but a few years ago, she thanked me for showing our kids that alcoholism's not a death sentence. That's the coolest thing I've ever heard in my life, because that's all I knew alcoholism to be. My dad was really the only example I saw of active alcoholism, and I knew how that ended. I'd never seen somebody get sober and get well, ever. You know, my friends can say nice things and that's fine. For someone that I put through the hell that I put through to say something like that to me, is only the power of God. It's not in me to just, act myself sober. And, you know, it's just been a tremendous thing to see all that, happen the way that it happened. And it's just one example of 1,000 things in my life that look so different. And it's because of this real relationship with God through these steps. It's nothing else. And let's see, maybe I can offend one or two more people and we'll close. That happened for me because of this relationship with God. And there's some well-meaning things that people say sometimes in meetings. I don't like spending a lot of time about what AA isn't rather than what AA is. But those guys taught me to think about my words at meetings, especially the longer I stayed sober. My sponsor said people are going to listen to you. It was confusing to me the first time that somebody talked about doing the next right thing, and I'm not. By all means, we should try to do the next right thing. But I heard a guy one time frame it in a way that disturbed me. He said, "My sobriety is contingent on me doing the next right thing," and I thought, what a terrible message to deliver to brand new people that can't do the next right thing. I couldn't. It's not a behavioral problem. I'm grateful that you guys showed me a God that's bigger than like my next decision. I've done the next wrong thing a lot, and I'm not saying do that and take your chances. We'll start making some better decisions just by accident. It's so bizarre. Of course we're going to change. Your sobriety is not contingent on you just doing the next right thing all the time. It's contingent on a relationship with God that you're going to get through these steps. We're setting people up for failure with stuff like that. It's not up to me today whether I stay sober. There's some very simple things that I have to do. It's showing up to Alcoholics Anonymous. And if the things actually happen to you, that's real easy. People ask me all the time outside of AA, why I still go to meetings. You still go to meetings so you don't accidentally drink? And it's like, no. If you've had a contact with God like we can have through these steps, the most natural response to that should be having your ass in a meeting trying to help somebody else. It's not and I get meeting fatigue like anybody, but it's like, should be the most exciting thing for me to do is to sit in a meeting and try to give somebody something that was given to me. So anyway, I'm grateful to be here, and I'll pass.